Yes, good evening everyone. I am Jigar Pandya and on behalf of the Ahmedabad Management Association, I welcome you all for this wonderful session. Before we start this session, I would like to request you all to give us a big hand to welcome Miss Sonal Radia Tyagi. Let us give her a please. All right, so far we have been watching films, and probably today we are going to understand the films. Now, there's a big difference in watching the films and understanding the films, and especially when today's topic is about deciphering the audio-visual communication into films, which in itself is a vast subject. Normally, I have been introducing regular business speakers. Now, this is for me also, it is the first time to introduce someone from the very, very dynamic field, which is the film production. So, before I proceed on the subject, I would like to give a short introduction about Ms. Sonal. She is an alumna of FTII Pune and Sophia College, Mumbai. She has worked in films and television both in India as well as East Africa. She's made content for CNN, Reuters, UNDP, and the Aga Khan Foundation. She produced a very peculiar name, Swahili, African language, Chakula Bora. It's called Africa's longest running sponsored show. In 2013, she made the transition to teaching, and now she teaches filmmaking at various institutes across India. In Ahmedabad, she is a visiting faculty at NID, and she's a faculty at GLSID as well. All right, before I speak something on a subject which I do not know, I would request now straight away her to please address. Thank you.
Thank you for coming. Really appreciate it. Okay, I'll just kind of launch into it straight off because we've just got 1 hour. We all go to the movies. I mean, if you don't go to the movies, you watch something on TV or you download something on your laptop. The whole gamut, right from cinema to something that you would watch on your mobile phone, consists of 2 things. It consists of sound and picture, right? So that's why we use the term audio-visual communication. There's sound and there's picture. And we're so used to it, we understand what it means. It doesn't matter where we watch it, whether we watch it on screen or on your phone. It's almost like a language that we all understand. We may not understand Portuguese or Swahili or some other language, but I don't think there's a person, you'd be very hard put to find a person today in any country, anywhere in the world, who doesn't understand audiovisual language. We're all very familiar with it. The time when the hero enters an airport, cut to a plane in the air, and he gets down in a totally different country. No one says what, how. We've understood that. We've understood what it stands for. So how did all this happen, and how did we arrive at a point where it happened? A language that we're all so familiar with, and by that language I mean audiovisual language, is actually one of the youngest languages in the world. It's only 123 years old. And for that, it's spread remarkably. We talk about going to the movies. The first moving images are exactly 123 years old. That's it. It's probably one of the world's youngest languages. There were these French brothers called the Lumiere Brothers, right? And I'll just show you a few very brief things, and then we'll kind of go into how audiovisual language works. Okay, nothing very exciting, right? This was the world's first cinematograph. Okay, this is the Lumiere factory, the workers leaving the factory. To us today, it looks like jerky, old black and white footage. These were the first moving images in the world. This had never been seen before. And actually, there's nothing like moving images. They're still images. And when we say 24 frames per second or 25 frames per second, what we're actually working with is persistence of vision. Your mind fills in the gaps. So these older films look a little jerky because they were 16 per minute, which is why they look a little jerky. Eventually we settled down to 24 and 25. At that time, this was still for private viewing. At that time, when we talk about new languages, the first time they actually screened it for public is the clip after this. They're very short. The camera, it was this old wooden camera. This was the first public screening in the world. This was in a tent in Paris in 1895. When this started, you're all sitting here very nicely, comfortably in an auditorium. When this started, everyone in the tent ran out. They thought the train was coming at them, and they ran out. So this is where cinema began. Today, none of us run out. You know the train's not going to come drive over you. And this was still silent. That is where we've come from. When you go to the multiplex and watch something on the huge screen with surround sound, or even in your home on the huge television with Dolby Surround, this is where it all began. Okay? In India, we're talking about films abroad. Today, this just looks like, I mean, you probably shot something better on your mobile phone, haven't you? Yeah? But this is where it all began. This was the first film ever in the world to be shown in public. That was it. By this time, there's no one left to watch. The tent was empty. Everyone had run out. In India, our first feature film, the official first feature film ever, is Raja Harishchandra by Dada Saheb Phalke. There are other films before that, but they're not considered Indian because they were British technicians or this or that. This is the first Indian film, 1913, Raja Harishchandra. Okay? Dada Saheb Phalke was amazing. He was quite an innovator. So this is where we trace our Indian cinema history from. After that, Phalke continued making films. What looks like silent films were actually never really silent. There'd be someone playing a musical instrument on the side. And the scores were written, so it was never, and the horse came and dark, dark, dark on the tabla, that kind of thing. So silent films were never really, really silent, and then you had these cards to give the visuals. Then there was this gentleman called Ardeshir Irani. He was like way ahead of its times. Alam Ara was the first sound film. Abroad it was the jazz singer, but we had Alam Ara here. Unfortunately, we don't have any footage of Alam Ara. It's all disappeared. We haven't preserved our own film heritage. It's just not there. Okay, it's not even there in the archives. Way before Technicolor, the Kashmir Ki Kali kind of films. Again, Ardeshir Irani produced the first color film. Again, we don't have a trace of it. This was called Kisan Kanya. We only have a few stills. So this was just the thing announcing Kisan Kanya. Color came to Indian cinema screens much later. he did this, and it was like an experiment, and again people found it too expensive. They didn't get their money's worth, and it kind of disappeared for 20 years more. But we actually produced the first color film way before the Technicolor films you've seen. Yeah, this we're talking about 1917, which is very, very early. Okay, now let's come to, so that's the history. There's been constant innovation. Sound came in, color came in, and right from the old actual film, analog film, we went on to digital film. Right now, almost everything is shot digitally. Even your feature films are shot digitally, yeah, on these big multi-sensor cameras. And whether now you have 3D and 4D and everything. So the techniques keep evolving, and the method of delivery keeps evolving. What do we mean by the method of delivery? Earlier, you would go only to the movie theater. Then you started getting it on television. Now you get it digitally. Even in the cinema, it's downloaded. It's a digital download, much as you have it at home. Okay, it's all digital downloads. And when you see a GIF on your phone, someone forwards you all these WhatsApp and Facebook things. We're constantly kind of glancing through them, aren't we? And the ease of sharing them. That is the delivery. Digital formats are easier to deliver. And the way we view it changes. And we have a much more, we consume more audiovisual content than probably any previous generation. Earlier it was like, if you could talk to your grandparents' generation, it was one movie a week, if they were film enthusiasts. Now it's like a constant consumption, isn't it, of audiovisual content? Audiovisual content is manipulated. It's got its own grammar. We press the right buttons to make you feel in a certain way. How is that done? So let's just look at some clips from a film and see how, because when you go to a theater, let's just go back to big films for a moment. When we go to theater, you talk about the script, bahut acha, kya drama, and you know the actor, isne kitna acha acting kiya. So that is what you remember, and I mean, especially star-based commercial cinema is very dependent on the way the actor is. But even with a good actor, there is a lot of, the language works. You don't notice it, but that emphasizes everything. Your script, your acting. How does that happen? So let's just look at something. I've taken a film you're all familiar with. Sholay? Everyone's watched Sholay, right? This media player. The sound won't be as good, but it's much better. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're just going to look at a few clips from Sholay, right? And we'll see how, let's watch it first. Sound ajaib hai. Sound ajaib.
कितने आदमी थे?
सरदार, 2 आदमी थे।
Is it audible right at the back?
दो आदमी। सुअर के बच्चों! वो 2 थे और तुम 3। फिर भी
how many of you, you've all watched Sholay, you're all familiar with it, right? This is the first time we see Gabbar Singh. Yes. When we put the camera, there are two things we talk about. One is image size. Okay, image size is normally based on the human form. So that's a full shot, sorry, that's a full shot, that's a mid shot, and that's a close shot. If I shoot it from here, it's a low angle. If I shoot it from here, it's a top angle. And it's literally, the kind of phrases we use in language. You look down on somebody, you look up to somebody. So when you take a low angle, you're making the person heroic. They are dominant. When you're shooting from a higher angle, then they are the submissive. So if you watch this, yes, his acting is brilliant, Gabbar Singh became iconic. But just look at it. The first time you see him, okay, he's shot from a very low angle. He is larger than life, he is dominant. And all these three who have come back from the village defeated are lower. They're shot from high up. And this is a common technique. If you see any superhero film, if you watch anything, the dominant figure will be shot from a low angle. So they look strong and dominating. And the submissive, the people who are kind of lower down in the hierarchy, are always shot from there. So you're literally looking down on them. Okay? So this is how camera angles affect the way you think about it. You might think you're just watching acting, but all these things are at work. They're as much a part of the language, audiovisual language that we say, right?
वापस आ गए खाली हाथ क्या समझ कर आए थे कि सरदार बहुत खुश होगा शाबाशी देगा क्यों धिक्कार है
What we've done is we've established him. This is the first time you see him. He's a powerful figure. You've done that through not just the acting, but the way you framed him, the camera angles, everything. Can you all see clearly right at the back?
ये लो तिजोरी की चाबी इसमें मेरे वो गहने हैं जो मेरे लिए बेकार हैं
Is that better?
मुझे अब कभी इनकी जरूरत नहीं पड़ेगी थोड़े बहुत पैसे हैं वो भी ले जाओ अच्छा है बाबूजी की झूठी उम्मीदें तो टूटेंगी जो उन्होंने तुम लोगों से लगा रखी है
Camera movement. Your camera keeps moving. It tilts up and down. We'll see an example of that. We call this a pan. We call this a tilt. It tracks either optically or physically. You isolating. She said something. They were trying to steal from the safe. She comes in and says, okay, take the money. Here's the keys. And ultimately, they decide to stay on. Okay, it's not said in so many words, the impact of what she says. The interactions, you all watched it, this is one pair. The moment she's left, the camera moves in on Amitabh and stays there. He becomes the center of the frame. So without saying, okay, what she said is impacting him, you've gone and close onto him. You are he is visually isolated. Okay, even though the other guy is there, the frame centers this person. So what it's telling you is that, look, he's impacted by what has happened. Now the same thing, watch this.
सुनिए
Okay, just one more thing. Um, I'll just go off track for a moment and talk about something else. Time. In cinema, one of the things we do is play with time. Audiovisual is recorded and then played back. And between the recording and the playing back, it's edited. And this is something we have become so used to. That happened in the night. This is the next morning. When you go to watch a film that runs over 1 hour or 1 hour 20 minutes or 3 hours, there are just a few films in the world that actually have the same time span. Those 3 hours would cover a story that lasts for 3 weeks or 3 years or 30 years or whatever. And you don't question, that was at night, tuck. You don't show him going to sleep, brushing his teeth, going to sleep, getting up in the morning, having his chai, all that. That ended, next morning. We all accept it. We accept this as audiovisual language. I'm so sorry, I'll just switch it off. I'm so sorry. Okay, so we've accepted that these shortcuts that are used, there's no person who doesn't understand it. But remember, like I said, this language is 120 years old. We've learned it so well. I don't think if we were to go and learn some, the subtitles here in Romanian, I'm sorry about that. It would take us 100 years to learn Romanian, I'm sure. In the last thing, what happened at night, we have what happened impacting him. Visually, he is isolated. Now let's continue.
कल रात जो हुआ वो दोबारा नहीं होगा.
Exactly the same things happened again. The interaction is between the two of them. Now what he has said, what he has done impacts her. So again you go in closer into her. So without saying that, okay, this interaction is being set up for the rest of the film, you've got that happening. You've got her saying something, you've got him saying something. But through camera movement also, through the way you frame, again, it's being emphasized. This is what I talk about subliminally. You don't realize this is happening, but it is. Your emotions are being manipulated by not just the lines and the acting, but by the techniques being used. The way it is shot, the way it is edited, everything has to add up. Just watch the whole sequence once. What we're talking about here, you want to convey a sense of chaos. They've been, the gang has come in, they're all celebrating Holi, which was at the beginning. And now suddenly there's all this chaos. How is it done? Through various things. First of all, okay, you've got a few by long shots, we mean those whole shots of the villages. But most of the time, your camera is closed and there's a lot of movement. And you're cutting very, very quickly. And then we talked about audio visual. So far, we've been talking about the visual element. The soundtrack is as important. It's often not noticed, but it plays on you, on your mind, as much as the visuals. So here you've got very loud music, a lot of, what we call synchronous sound, people screaming, various sounds, things collapsing, the sound of chaos. This would actually have just like, you've placed your camera here, and you've just got a few characters running in the frame. And then you cut very quickly to someone else running in the frame. It's brilliant shooting and editing. We talk about, chase sequences and dance sequences and everything. So when you're doing that, and then you put it together to a certain kind of music, very frenetic, quick, music with almost a hint of violence, and then you put in all the screaming and the things. So you're conveying chaos through the techniques you have used. You're manufacturing that chaos through the way, which images you choose, the way you put the images together. Now just listen to it for a minute. You've got all the sound. Total chaos, things are collapsing. Something else crept into the sound. Did you hear that tin 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 tin? And then you see the Ranger running. So what's happened is yes sir? What happens is just before he's seen, one more element comes in this soundtrack, this kind of tin tin tin, which is completely different from the violence and the loud sound. There's a certain element of, 1 minute, I'll just pause it. There's a certain element of playfulness which enters just before you see Dharmendra and Hema Malini running. The soundtrack, another hint that they're about to enter. And then you see them enter. So the sound itself is indicative that something is going to change. And then he starts shooting, and then they kind of protect the village, all that. So you're giving it not just a visual thing, but you're also indicating it in the sound. Okay. I'll just take this back a frame or two. Now we're coming to the thing where first the lady has been caught and then he has been caught, and they're at Gabbar Singh's place. We talk about sound, but when you see Gabbar Singh again, and again he's in a position of power, he's got these two captive, what you hear is silence. So silence is also very effectively used. You've just got him and then he spits. Silence is as effective because normally when you go to a film, it's filled with things. It's filled with music, it's filled with soundtrack. Silence is also a tool that's used in cinema, a very effective tool. Here it's used almost threateningly. And then you've got Hema Malini and you've got that tilt up from her feet up to her body. That is what we call a point of view shot. That is Gabbar Singh looking at this woman. And then he comments about her. But that shot, you're showing the hero looking at something, looking at a gun, and you cut to the gun. That's what's called a point of view shot, that you're putting yourself in that, in the protagonist's head, and you're shooting what he or she sees. So first you had that shot of Gabbar Singh, and there was silence. There wasn't that music and dark and this and that. There was just silence and he spat. And then you had this tilt up to her face, from her feet to her face. So like it's him looking at her. Okay, which is very scary. You didn't have that kind of, scary music. But it's as bad. He's kind of eyeing her, right? And then he passes comments on her.
अरे ओ सांभा, ये रामगढ़ वाले अपनी बेटियों को कौन चक्की का पिसा आटा खिलाते हैं रे? जरादारी के हाथ पांव देख, बहुत करारे हैं इस साले, बहुत करारे हैं।
सरदार, पिछले बरस हम हरिपुर वाले जमुना दास की शादी में छुप छुपा कर गए थे। वहां बहुत जोर नाची थी ये।
वाह, बहुत कटीली नचनिया होगी। जरा हमको भी दिखाओ दो चार ठुमके। देखो छमिया, ज्यादा नखरे मत करो, नहीं तो ये गोरी चमड़ी है ना, सारे बदन से खुरच खुरच कर उतार दूंगा, समझी?
Look at that angle again. Okay, they could have put the camera between the two. When you're shooting what we call the two shot, two people talking to each other, you normally try and find an eye level which is between the two. But here they haven't done that because here again he's in a more powerful position. So they put that. Whenever they're shooting her, it's like that. So she is right now in a more submissive position. She is powerless. Right now he is powerful. Besides everything else, this is also being conveyed.
वीरू!
ठहरो रानी, बांध दो साले को। बहुत याराना लगता है।
It's shot from here. It's not shot from here. It's shot from here. He is in power completely at this point of time. Right? The first time these techniques were used on screen was by a lady called Leni Riefenstahl. She had filmed the Nazi rally at Nuremberg. She had used the low angles. And that's used in all propaganda films, and it's become one of those, it's become a part of cinema language. This guy's in a position of power. The camera is here, it's not here. Yeah?
आओ महारथी, आज आया है ऊंट पहाड़ के नीचे। इस छमिया से तेरा टांका भिड़ाए क्या रे?
हरामजादे, तुझसे बड़ा कमीना मैंने जिंदगी में नहीं देखा।
और अब देखोगे नहीं, क्योंकि जिंदगी तो अब खत्म होने वाली है। और हम ज्यादा
So you had him in a position of complete power. Now, like all good Hindi films, like all good commercial films, the bad guy has to get defeated. Up till now, every time you've seen Gabbar Singh, it's from here. The camera is, he is dominant. Now, good film, bad guy has to be defeated, good guy has to come out on top. Yeah? It's what we want. We want the good guys winning. The good guys get the girl, the good guys defeat the bad guys. That's how popular cinema works. So just watch this and you know that, but how is it being played out besides the script and the acting? How is it played out cinematically? It's not theatre. Theatre is this. You go to theatre, there are people performing, it's this. You choose what you want to see. In cinema, the camera chooses what you see. Okay, that is the essential difference. So just, you watched 2 Gabbar sequences where Gabbar was always dominant. Now this is the end, where Gabbar's getting defeated. It's of course it's brilliant acting, of course it's brilliant writing, but what else does it work? The dynamics have changed completely. Now you're shooting him from up there and he's down there. Okay? And till now, the Thakur was always shown at this level. Now suddenly he's dominant. For the first time, the tables have turned. And you're conveying that visually as well. There is one other angle which I don't know if you noticed. The first time you saw Gabbar Singh, his henchmen were around. And in the rest of the film, the villagers are almost scared of him. Even when they do help defeat him, they're very scared of him. Now for the first time in this sequence, the villagers are on that hilltop. Instead of Gabbar's goons, it's the villagers all around. It's almost a psychological thing that for the first time, they are now in a position of power. So it's not just the Thakur, it's all the villagers standing on the thing. I haven't taken the whole sequence because otherwise we'll get to see that.
ठाकुर साहब, छोड़ दीजिए इसे। मुजरिम को
Okay. So now the tables have turned. Good guys defeated. We'll just end with this because it's absolutely so cinematic. Among other things, it touches on widow remarriage. She's in love with the guy, he's killed. This is a second chance at happiness. And then he's killed, and that's his funeral pyre. And then you kind of, pan, the camera goes, and she closes the window, and it's such a beautiful frame. It's almost like a painting. It's all brown, and she's in the white. And earlier you've seen her like putting out candles, putting out the lanterns and things, and he's down there. And now it's almost like this. It's not just physical closing of a window. It's almost a symbolic closing, that that part of life for her is over. Whatever chance she had at happiness. So while it ends with the defeat of the bad guy, actually it goes even beyond that. It's Dharmendra and Hema in the train. But here it's almost like one chapter is completely closed. There's no Rona Dhona. She doesn't come out and say, oh, there goes my chance at happiness. It's a very gently, beautifully handled scene. That closing of the window is so, so poignant. So what we kind of looked at was, this was just a very brief session, but what we looked at was how audiovisual communication, because I don't like saying cinema or film, because we've gone way beyond film. Okay, most of you consume content on YouTube, on Netflix, and that's not necessarily long feature films, but the principles of it remain the same. Even when we're watching Sacred Games or something, the principles remain the same. These techniques are used. The way the camera moves, the way you edit, the way you use sound. Just before we end, let me give you a very simple example when I say the way you use sound. And this is something I always start with my students in sound class. I say, imagine a girl sitting in a room, there's a window, and she's at her desk. Okay, and you've got gentle light coming in through the curtain, and you hear bird song, and maybe you hear some seaside noises. Pleasant, nice, and there's some pleasant music going on. Now change the thing. You've got the same girl sitting at the same desk, and you've got lightning, and the room is kind of semi-dark and gray, and you've got weird sounds, and you hear footsteps. So just with the same actress, the same setup, by changing the lighting and by changing the sound, you've changed the context entirely. Now it's a build-up to a horror film. Okay, so that's what happens in cinema. There's so much happening to manipulate the way we respond.
I think she deserves a bigger round of applause, isn't it? Watching Sholay had never been the same for me, honestly. I do not belong to the technical facets of filmmaking and everything, but today the way she explained how Sholay had been made and different angles, it was really fascinating for me. One big takeaway which I could learn from what she has said today, we can see the maturity of the audience, the maturity of the technology, the maturity of the competitiveness in different facets when she showed a clipping of 1895 probably, when she said that when the train was coming, people ran out in that clipping. From that day till today, now we see kids, a 3D movie they see and they don't get shocked. So now people are working on 4D or 5D probably. Imagine the impact. There was no sound in that clipping. It was just a first movie shown, and people ran out of the movie theater seeing a train coming. And today, after seeing Bahubali or maybe even bigger movie in 3D, the kids, they do not get shocked. Look at the maturity of the audience, the maturity of the content, and the competitive environment that is going to come. I do not know how many students are here of filmmaking, but most of you may be knowing AMA had recently inaugurated the center, the Rupa and Anand Pandit Center for Film Production. It's a huge step for the city. And after those two film stars who had inaugurated this, we had Jitendra, we had Sanjay Dutt. And after those two events, probably this is the first such talk which is talking much in detail about filmmaking and the technicalities involved in filmmaking. Believe me, I had seen 20 times Sholay, but I have never seen the way it had been shown today. So, so thank you very much, and a small gesture of appreciation we would like to Thank you very much.